What's good, class? We're going to be talking about the swine flu in our presentation and how it relates to the 2020 and 2021 COVID pandemic.
Within this slide, our team has provided a quote elaborating upon the truth and history of pandemics. The quote reads, "Major flu pandemics arise on average only about 3 times every century, which means scientists can make relatively few direct observations in each lifetime and have a long time to think about each observation. This is a circumstance ripe for overinterpretation. In the past, scientists believed pandemics to be simply cyclical and predictable over time. However, it was quickly determined that pandemics over in a unpredictable manner, making them difficult to combat, as preparations against them are hard to be made." Another quote providing background on pandemics is provided in this slide and states, "In 1976, scientists had seen the 1918 Spanish influenza, Asian flu of 1957, and the so-called Hong Kong flu of 1968. Some experts believe that the flu pandemic tended to recur on an 11-year cycle, and they were prepared for an outbreak in the late 1970s. However, as technological advances were made, the ability to create vaccines became possible, as seen today with the current-day COVID-19 vaccine."
The beginning of the swine flu pandemic occurred January of the year 1976 within Fort Dix military base, located in New Jersey. The first man to pass due to the deadly as well as unpredictable swine flu was Private David Lewis. Following the death of many others within Fort Dix, scientists concluded that the swine flu consisted of similar respiratory strains that had also caused the 1918 flu pandemic, allowing for scientists to anticipate the harm of the deadly swine flu. Unfortunately, uneducated individuals such as those from the Ford administration ignored the World Health Organization regulations to launch an official vaccine, therefore worsening the pandemic further.
In 1976, the Ford administration, as previously explained, was uneducated as well as ignorant, therefore not processing the possibility of anticipating the magnitude of the swine flu pandemic. Unfortunately, their ignorance led to their failure of making successful vaccines to combat the virus. A woman by the name of Clara Ruth Jarrett passed away due to the vaccine created by the Ford administration, making this occurrence enough to harm the public image of the Ford administration, making them
In
untrustworthy.
1976, the U.S. government was able to provide the public with a reliable combatant against, at the time, deadly flu virus. However, the significant medical advancements came at an extreme price, as many lives were lost until the flu vaccine became available. This reality is expressed in the quote provided above. It reads, "Scientific breakthroughs are invariably associated with the human cost. The vaccine was a result of public action, as expressed in the quote. Limitations in science understanding of the virus hindered vaccine efforts, according to Dr. David Oshinsky, a medical historian at New York University, but a fringent public begged for solutions. It is also clear that a vaccine was needed, yet the knowledge about the virus was limited, expressed in the quote that states, desperate for a vaccine, but they just didn't know the science."
The 1918 influenza pandemic has similarities to both the swine flu pandemic as well as the COVID-19 pandemic, as an estimated 500 million people, or 1/3 of the world's population, became infected with this virus. The number of deaths is estimated to be at 50 million worldwide, about 675,000 occurring in the United States. The swine flu pandemic is also similar, as experts estimated that the swine flu of 1976 could infect 50 million to 60 million Americans. This never happened. In fact, only about 200 cases of the swine flu and 1 death were ultimately reported in the US, the CDC said. And ultimately, the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic has lots of similarities, as an estimated 159 million of the world's population have been affected with this virus. The number of deaths is currently estimated to be at over 3 million worldwide, with about 583,000 occurring in the United States. The 1976 swine flu vaccine facts. Once a respiratory infection strain emerged at Fort Dix, General Ford raced to a response and consulted the polio vaccine creators Jonas Salk and Albert Sabin to create a vaccine. This was the first time the United States government had ever tried to vaccinate its entire population. Every American would be vaccinated. No lockdowns were enforced, no mask mandates. Manufacturers of the vaccine liability was waived by Congress. In June 1976, it was proven not effective upon children, which created arguments on who should be vaccinated and when. Reports of deaths in cases of the swine flu were linked to the vaccine. These are still cited today by the anti-vaccine movement. Panic emerged as states paused vaccinations. Vaccines started October 1976, and by December 1976, following 94 reports of paralysis, the entire program was shut down. Large numbers of the swine flu never materialized. Some accuse Ford of trying to create a political advantage during an election year by creating a national vaccine. Others believe the program appears clearly to have been based upon the concern for the public good. The risk outweighed the benefits. He did not get reelected. It was a single-dose vaccine. 20% of the American population was vaccinated. Americans became distrustful of the government policy and programs. It was considered a failure. Vaccine hesitancy was prevalent.
The COVID-19 virus, also known as the coronavirus, due to its deadly nature, has caused various adjustments in the life of many inhabiting this earth during the pandemic. For example, the respiratory infection strain emerged in Washington State January 2020. President Trump declared it a national emergency March 13, 2020. Named Operation Warp Speed, vaccines began development March 2020. Intent is to vaccinate entire U.S. population. States travel and lockdowns in force. Mask mandates. Manufacturers of the vaccine liability was waived by Congress. Manufacturers, it is determined to be transmitted airborne. FDA approved testing kits. Multiple pharmaceutical companies created COVID-19 vaccines. First vaccine trials in March 2020. Arguments on who should be vaccinated and when. Elderly first. Children trials began a year later. Vaccine side effects such as paralysis, blood clots, and death reported. Panic emerges as states paused vaccines. Large numbers of COVID-19 materializing. Over 4,000 reports of death among people who received the COVID-19 vaccine. Some vaccines are double dose, making the test full vaccination and immunity more difficult. Currently, 262 million doses are given and 116 fully vaccinated. Trump criticized for his dealings with public health organizations. Event occurred during an election. He is not reelected. Vaccine hesitancy is currently
Hesitancy. How and why the 1976 swine flu impacted American history and vaccine hesitancy. How did the swine flu of 1976 impact the United States COVID-19 vaccination of today? The fiasco of the swine flu immunization attributed to a hesitancy or distrust in government vaccinations. This makes it harder to contain a disease. In order to control a disease, a community must reach herd immunity, which means that a majority of people cannot get sick or spread the disease to others. In 1976, only 20% of the American population was vaccinated against the swine flu. Luckily, the swine flu never spread. Why did the swine flu of 1976 impact the United States COVID-19 vaccination of today? The distrust affected the reason why vaccinations are not always successful. The percent of people that need to be immunized to achieve herd immunity varies by disease. For COVID-19, experts estimated that 70 to 90% of a community would need to either contract the disease or be vaccinated against it. Currently, there are only 35.2% of the American population vaccinated against COVID-19. The swine flu vaccine of 1976 was considered a fiasco, and clear parallels can be seen between both the swine flu and the COVID-19 vaccination initiatives. Repeating mistakes from the past this time around could threaten the fragile confidence in public health and promote dangerous anti-vaccination.
This message remains present through history, and it reads, "Roll up your sleeves, America. Aimward and onward to victory. Don't wait. Go vaccinate."
Thank you for watching.